I'm going to share with you what I've learned from spending close to $1 million in influencer marketing. By the end of this video, you will have a solid action plan on how you can start working with influencers. You'll learn lessons on what it's like to work with people like Reid Hoffman or Dave Portnoy, and what it's like working with people that have 1,000 followers or 1 million. If you are careful, you could lose thousands of dollars in influencer marketing, so I'm also going to share what you should not do. So let's get into the video, and the most important question is, should you use influencers? Influencers are the holy grail. Here's what it looks like when you initially start working with them. 80% of your spend is not going to pay itself back. It's going to go into the crap bucket. 10% will be an okay return, so it's relatively positive ROI. And then the last 10% are going to be magic. These magic placements will have between a 3 to 5x performance increase than what you have on other pay-per-click channels. In order to work with influencers, you also want the right kind of product. So physical, tangible products are great to work with influencer versus a software or a digital thing. But I use the digital one and it works. You can get it done. It's just a little bit harder. The third thing is be careful about what you can afford to lose. For a lot of people, influencer marketing doesn't end up working out. It's a very expensive channel to test. So make sure that you have some budget set aside that can be your play budget. And if you lose it on influencers, it isn't the end of the world. So if you have an effective funnel, a good product for it, and you're not using your rent money to spend on influencers, this could be a really good channel for you. Next, how do you find the right influencers? Developing an influencer strategy is very similar to SEO. I like to put it into 3 different buckets. Direct topic is your low-hanging fruit. You already know who these people are in your space. They are the thought leaders. They are the people who are directly talking to your customers and making content specifically for them. I recommend that you always start here because it's the low-hanging fruit. You know who it is, and if they're in your price range, it's great to work with them. You shouldn't be getting super abstract with different types of placements because this is much easier to test. Always start here. There's no need to get too creative right off the bat. The second bucket is your adjacent interests. Now, adjacent interests potentially have the highest ROI of any of these buckets, and here's why. This is a way to reach them through other channels and other avenues. I've seen a lot of success with this. We had a product that was around entrepreneurship and for entrepreneurs. So under the direct topic interest, you could do, how to be an entrepreneur video and sponsor those kinds. And we had good performance on some and mixed on others. But the ones that we saw a lot of success was just business essays. And for us, what we noticed was a lot of our customers love that type of content. And I was our potential customer, and I love that type of content. This is a potential goldmine of finding a lot. But don't get here until you've already gone through a lot of your direct topic placements. The third one is just random topics. What you're looking for here is, do they have high engagement levels? And is this something your customer would watch? If it's a meme page on Instagram and they are for people who are 13, but your customers might be 30 plus, it's not a good random bucket. But if it's a page where people would follow them, but it has nothing to do with your topic, it has a lot of potential. The random topics bucket is something that you're going to look at way later. First, you want to go through your direct topics. You want to go through adjacent interests. After you've done a lot of spend there, now you can look at doing these random topics. Next, let's go through all the different types of placements, starting with podcast placements. Podcast placements are great. Typical CPMs for a podcast are between $30 to $40 up to $100 plus. Podcast listeners are very loyal audiences. They are high intent and they typically have a lot of spending power. The biggest downside of podcasts is the tracking is very poor. You might hear something like go to athleticgreens.com/Tim in order to get this, and that is the main metric. There are some that claim that they have a pixel where they can actually track via listen. I haven't seen anything that actually works really well. Maybe the technology has changed, but it is going to be very hard for you to track. If you use things like a Heidi How survey, which is a how did you hear about us survey, after checkout, you can get better ideas of tracking. Podcast placements will typically be in between 1 to 2 minutes in regards to a read. Maybe you get something at the pre-roll, maybe you get something in the middle, maybe something at the end. It really depends on how you're working with them and how much you want to spend. A lot of the times you can also get a social post involved in it too. So you're like, hey, could you also just post about us on Twitter or do a retweet of something that we've done? Or on other social channels, there are some opportunities there. So always try to negotiate other things that you can get. Next are social placements. Think TikTok or Instagram. There are different things you could have, like a native social post, so it's something that's on the feed, or it could be something that's in a story, or some people have disappearing native posts where we'll have it in our feed only for 24 hours. There's a lot of variants. Some people even switch their bio to your company's link and change the bio to say, go here today, use code X to do this. Here's how you can actually gauge if an influencer has a very good audience. I would almost always ignore how many followers they have. Instead, what I like to do is I like to look at the last 20 posts that they've done and look at what the average engagement on that is. So if someone has 100,000 followers, but they're only getting, let's say, 1,000 impressions, it's a pretty dead audience. You're not going to actually reach those 100,000 people magically. When working with TikTok or Instagram influencers, I always like to ask if we can use whatever creative they make, we own, and we can repurpose for ads. If you work with someone and the performance doesn't work on their social channel, I've worked with a lot of people where I was able to make my money back by having a good piece of creative and reusing it with Facebook ads, and it just absolutely kills there. It depends on what sort of product you have, if Instagram or TikTok are really going to work for you, but it's a very good channel and it's worth exploring. Next are Twitter influencers, and I'm putting it in a different bucket because it is a bit of a different world and there's one hack that you can do that's a bit different. I would look at them the same way as a TikTok influencer or an Instagram influencer in regards to impressions and the engagement they have in their community. The thing that's different though, and what's really cool, you can do this on Facebook, but most people don't know you can do this on Twitter, is you can whitelist someone's account for a post. So they'll do the post about your business. And then if you get approval from that account, you can then boost that post on Twitter too. And then you could target lookalikes of their audience or whatever retargeting you want to do. That's how you get the most juice if you're going to work with Twitter influencers. And I highly recommend trying to do some sort of CPA deal also, especially if it's more of a micro influencer. We've gotten, we've lost thousands of dollars on social posts natively in the feed that ended up only ending in like 1 or 2 customers. So you want to be very careful trying to spend too much when you see someone has a very big audience. Next are YouTube influencers. YouTube influencers are the apex of influencer marketing. It's a combination of having a highly engaged audience, but also you can have very good tracking and you have a lot of really good retention. I recommend not starting YouTube influencer ads until you've run ads on YouTube. You're going to be spending at least $2,500 on a placement. So don't get into it if you don't have, $100,000 to spend in your budget. We used to drop $16,000 for a single placement in a niche YouTube channel with 1 million subs. So you can only imagine what it's like working with a Mr. Beast level influencer. I got to talk with someone who did work with Mr. Beast. And what he told me was the placement itself with Mr. Beast was not actually profitable, but what's profitable about it was then a bunch of influencers hit them up and wanted to work with them because they had worked with Mr. Beast. It's kind of like if Kim Kardashian does a post about some, brand, then a lot of other smaller influencers want to have that same brand connected to both of them. So if you do have, multiple $1 million that you could drop on a single video, could be cool to work with them. But don't expect that same top level performance that you would see in a more niche targeted channel. A really cool hack that you could do with YouTube ads is you could actually target channels and people that like this channel, like maybe some specific cooking channel. You can target their channel with your ads before you even advertise with them. And you kind of get an idea if that audience has a higher affinity towards your brand before you even work with them. I also like to do that during the actual campaign and to help me with retargeting too. Now that we have an idea of the general landscape of framework in different types of placements, let's get into the actual meat and potatoes. And that is, how would you actually deploy your budget? I break deploying the budget into 3 different pieces. You have discover, you have optimize, and you have scale. We're going to walk through what it would be like to deploy $1 million across the 3 stages for your brand. So for discovery, let's imagine $0 to $100,000. That's what this range is. This range, you don't know what up is, you don't know what down is. You're just trying to find out, what works and what has potential for you. I recommend in this piece doing maybe 3 to 5 YouTube placements, 3 to 5 podcasts, maybe 3 to 5 newsletters, or, 10 different social posts, targeting around $60,000 in spend. During this phase, you'll have some standout performance. You'll start to see, what's working, what isn't working. Maybe podcasts are working well, newsletters are working well, social posts aren't. Maybe you had a breakthrough on YouTube. And what you're going to do here is you're going to break all those placements into 3 separate buckets. The first bucket is what we talked about earlier. These are your trash can placements. It was not profitable at all. Maybe you didn't get a sale from it. That happens very often. The second bucket are your average placements. Maybe they had an acceptable CPA. Maybe it was slightly profitable or it was just break even. And the third bucket, these are your magic placements. These are where you're making all your money back on all the other stuff that you've spent. And it totally is worth it. You're going to spend the rest of that budget, just continue testing, continue fine tuning, and then that gets you ready for our stage 2, which is the optimized stage. So for my optimized stage, I like to have 50% of the budget still on testing, trying to still find new channels, discover. 20% you want roughly on your average placements that were kind of break even, were kind of working for you, like it's acceptable spend. And then the last 30, you're going to be putting into those magic placements. You're going to be working on longer contracts with them and trying to get better deals. The reason you're still going to work on those average placements is you're going to try to optimize your offer. You're going to give new deals, you're going to update your landing page, you're going to see if you can increase the performance on those placements. With the magic placements, if they're working and they're working well, don't mess with them. We'll take the learnings from optimizing these average placements, and eventually when the magic placements have lower performance, you're gonna put those in so you can get an increase there. And then all of the test placements, you're gonna have those landing pages optimized from what you learned from the average placements. It's kind of a way to test in this environment, which is very hard versus doing it naturally in like a Facebook ad category. For optimize, you're spending between $100,000 to $350,000. Now we're ready for scale. That's $350,000 to the last $1 million. We're going to be spending most of our money here because that's where all of the meat and potatoes are. At scale, you're going to be spending 80% of your budget on the magic placements. Forget the average performing placements. We don't want to work with them. If you could deploy that capital on Meta ads or Facebook ads, might as well do that there. They're too much lift to be able to do for influencers. 80% on the magic and 20% still to be doing on testing, because you always need to be testing. At some point, these magic placements will hit fatigue and you'll have to move on your budget. And if you haven't found new placements during that period, you're going to be in trouble. You can go back to the optimized phase where you're just testing most of your budget. At the end of this stage, you should be able to confidently say that my best placements are on this type of channel with this kind of offer and this type of creative. Now, how do you get people to even say yes? How do you even get them to talk about you? How do you do outreach right? Now, the cooler your brand is, the better your product is, the easier it is. But you can still make up with that with very good outreach and a good strategy and system behind you. This is a sample email that you could use. Most of the messages that influencers are getting are typically people asking for free placements or shout outs for free. So if you just put in a simple message saying, hey, we're willing to pay, we really respect you as a business, like we understand that you have rates, that puts you above 90% of offers. I like to find out, like email, like DMs, like LinkedIn, and just do a bunch of messaging all at once and kind of like get into their mind. And typically a bigger influencer has a manager, so you'll likely just be talking and interfacing with the manager. You want to just be professional, like be down to business and brass tacks. At some point, you'll have to do some negotiations, so you want to make sure that you have a friendly relationship. When you first start out, you'll be able to just message everyone, just cowboy, shoot from the hip. But later, you're going to want to actually build a system, so you make sure that you're checking back in. It's like every 2 weeks, I like to remessage or see how they're doing. Also, you don't want to remessage them, and especially if you have multiple people on your team, like them sending the same message to them, but from different addresses. So at some point, you're going to want to build a system. It doesn't have to be super complex. It could be a Google Sheet with like 4 columns, or you could use your favorite CMS. No matter how you do it, just make sure that at some point you're building towards an outreach system, and you'll see a lot of success. Once you get a soft yes, now it's time to figure out how to actually negotiate the placement. Everyone believes that they have a premium audience and they want to charge $100 CPM. I don't know about your product, but for me, $100 CPM never works even with a premium audience. So you want to be very careful with these. Unless you have a super niche high ticket product, you're gonna have a very hard time with that. There's a lot of small things that you could do in the contract with things like make goods and, like promises of creative that might help if the performance doesn't do well. But in general, you have to be able to be transparent with them and say, hey, like, that's not gonna work for us. And you always need to be in a position where you can walk away. Also, never come from the negotiations of a place of FOMO where you feel like you have to get in. I've done that before and ended up booking deals that weren't right for us. Now, They said yes, you guys agreed on a number, congratulations, now it's time to actually book the placement and put it in a contract. If you want to not come across as a noob, either have a contract made if you have lawyers or a legal team. If not, there's a lot of legal, like boiler templates that you can use and just kind of switch around some words. Or in a lot of cases, they have a contract and you'll want to review that. Here are some mechanics that you can use in the contract that'll be really helpful for you. First is you want a clause for a make good, so you're gonna have an expected view count. So if this doesn't hit 100,000 views, we're gonna do a make view in another video. If it doesn't hit 100,000 views within the first, 30 days or whatever it might be. This is a pretty common practice and not everyone is down for it, but if the number is reasonable and it's something that, they've worked with other businesses before, it's something that they'll be used to. You want to try and get the rights of the creative also in the contract. So it's just stated like whatever is created, we can use, free range. Some creatives don't want to do this, and I understand, but some people will die on the hill. It's up to you if it's worth it or not if you can't get the creative. Typically, if it's something like a YouTube placement, that creative doesn't really work well with retargeting since it was in the middle of a video, in the middle of a story. But if it's something like a TikTok or an Instagram post, you want to really try to get it in the contract. You basically want to think of your contract as whatever has been unstated to state it there. So, if you want, like a clickable link in the bio, like put that in the contract. If you want it to be, like how long the placement's going to be, how many of them in the video or whatever, you try to want to have all that in there as much as possible. So then when you look back at it, you say, okay, like we agreed on this. If not, you're going to be put into an awkward position if they give you a really bad placement and it doesn't have any performance. Typically, people are comfortable with this, but it's also dependent on the placement size. If you're booking a $10,000 YouTube placement, you're going to want to have a lot of legal stuff in place to protect you. But if you're doing a $100, Instagram post, it might not be worth your time to do in that same regard. But it's always good to protect yourself legally. Now let's get into some of the best practices. So how to actually get the most bang for your buck on these placements. First, this one's pretty standard, but not everyone does it, is you want a custom landing page for the influencer. Go to athleticgreens.com/Tim so you can see that special offer. On that page, you also want to be able to use like a picture of them, custom text around them, the special promo code that they read in the offer in the creative. If you use this, you get this special thing for my audience. In the creative, you always want to have that too. Another best practice is be careful of really small influencers. In a lot of cases, they're not worth it. The math behind it is pretty hard. If someone's getting 1,000 impressions, let's say you have a 5% click-through rate, you're getting 50 page views, you get a 2% conversion rate on those 50, you might get one sale. If you spent 1 hour, like talking with them, another hour, negotiating, setting up the web page, all that stuff, it's like you have to factor in your own time also and see if it's worth it. So unless you have a strategy for working with a lot of micro influencers, I would beware. If you do want to work with smaller influencers, I would run a cost per acquisition deal and have it be more referral based. So you can use this link however you want, however wide and far you want to. You can post about it in your podcast, on your YouTube, etc. And we'll track and give you anyone that comes in through your unique link or via your code. Now, if you find an up-and-coming person who has never run an ad before, try to be there first. This is huge because you have a very engaged audience that's very excited about this person and they want to show a way to be supportive of them. We've gotten to be the first ad for several very big influencers now. And whenever we did that, it was highly profitable and was a good bang for your buck. A lot of people always ask me, should I be paying for tools? Like what tools should I pay? There's some tools that you could pay that are like $19 a month. There's tools that you could pay $50,000 a year for. I highly recommend trying to make it work for yourself as long as you can. At some point, you might have some breakage. And at that point, you'll know exactly what tools you want to spend money on and actually really engage with. But I would stay away from them initially because you really don't need them in a lot of cases. You can get in, you can learn a lot, you can just scrap things together with tools that you already know, and everything else is just shiny and will make your flows optimized in the future, but don't indulge in them until you already have the basics down. I alluded to this a bit earlier, but create a special offer. Create a special offer for them so they feel like if they work with them through this link, they get a special discount. That is the best way to work with an influencer and to really help with tracking. If you don't do that, they might just go through the normal website, and then you won't know that they went through them. It's not a perfect system, but it works really well, and you'll get a much higher conversion rate because of it. Now, there's a right and wrong way to work with influencers. If you're a very big brand, a lot of people try to do a top-down approach where they're like, this is really, what you have to say in the messaging and determining the creative. Whenever I've done that, it's been, not natural to their normal content style, and there seems like something off with them, versus them doing a bottoms-up approach where they get to come up with fun ideas and how they want to talk about it and integrate it to what they're already doing. You get them more passionate about it. You obviously need to have this is what the offer is. You have to say the offer. These are the points that we're interested in that you can talk about, because a lot of people might not understand your product. But when it comes to the actual creative and the deliverance, I would really, really give them autonomy. They're pros at what they do, let them do their thing, and they're going to give you new angles that you can use in your marketing in the future. Now, here are some red flags. These are the things that are going to save you tens of thousands of dollars. First one is don't do a package deal right out the gate. I once did a package deal right out of the gate where we did 4 podcast episodes. You've probably listened to this podcast before, and it seemed like the right audience and everything seemed good, but what ended up happening was none of them performed. We literally dropped $20,000 with almost zero performance. That did not work well. I always advise people to do test episodes and then continue. If people won't do a test, I just kindly say, sorry, I guess we won't work together. And if that ever changes, let me know, but sorry, we always like to do a test. So I recommend doing a test before doing a package deal. The second thing to look for with an audience is understand their growth and how long and when they grew and why. Was it a viral post over a year ago and now they have a dead audience? What was that viral post about? Does it align with what you're doing? Are they still talking about it now? Most influencers have pretty dead audiences, so you want to really deeply understand where their growth came from and why. And if it doesn't match with what you're doing, then you can always politely walk away. Should I use an agency? This is a really big question. I have a mentor who always said, work with an agency, learn the playbook, and then you can run it internally. The thing about agencies with influencer marketing is, first, they have their own personal networks that are built up. So they have a lot of people they can reach out to. You can move very quickly. But they also are trying to work with people they've already worked with before. What's up about that is you're not necessarily getting the network building that you want to, so you can work with these influencers in the future as well as you want to if you walk away from this agency. It's industry standard to over-report results. So they'll take Heidi How information, the how did you hear about us information, and they'll use a mathematical formula to say this many people use this code of this many customers. Therefore, we only reported, let's say, 10 conversions, but really it's more like 4x. They'll say, we actually had 40 conversions versus those 10 because X% of people used our code of these 100. It's ridiculous. And you're gonna spend on placements that you shouldn't have because you 4x your results. They're transparent about their process, and I bought into it. I was very hesitant, but I was like, okay, we do a little bit of hand waving. But if you're looking into your database and you're seeing okay, they're way over reporting revenue, there's no way they're getting all of these sales, and this is actually an unprofitable placement for us, you're gonna find out later rather than sooner that working with them probably wasn't the best idea. If you want to get up and running really quick, work with an agency and they can just get you started. But long term, it's always better to have this thing internal because you understand your product, who you want to work with. It is just a better long-term strategy. Beware of working with people that you're a fan of. It seems like fun. It's like working with famous people, but you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. The thing about influencers is they're different than celebrities. I think that is a key difference that's hard to understand. An influencer has a good niche, they may be famous, but they're not a celebrity. A celebrity, they have a lot of attention on the external rings of them. So I might not be a fan of this person, but I might watch their video because I know them or I engage with them and it gets served wider on social. But I have no affiliation towards them and I won't buy a product that they're doing. A very niche audience that this person has built up a lot of trust is more likely to get a conversion versus a celebrity talking about your product. unless if you're trying to do a lot of brand marketing or maybe reuse that creative in other ways that you can. But they're typically very high priced and you might not get your return on it. Now that's a wrap. I hope this was super helpful. Working with influencers can be one of the best channels. So I hope that you took a lot from this. Thank you so much for watching. I'm happy to answer any questions. Please make sure you subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot of very helpful content in this world to help people, work better, grow their projects, build things that are useful for the world. So I'm really happy to help you. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, my friends.